Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the last video, we discussed the concept of power, its elements and dimensions. Now, in this video, we are going to discuss the concept of power according to different IR thinkers. Different IR thinkers have different perspective about the power and its definition. So let's start our discussion. First, we are going to start with CARR, a very well-known classical realist. So let's see what he talks about the definition of power. According to CARR, power is indivisible. But for the purpose of discussion, it can be divided into three categories, and CARR divided power into three distinct categories. One of them is military power, the second is economic power, and the third is power over opinion. And the second thing he said about power was that yet due to anarchical distribution of system, CARR gave more importance to military form of power. He believed that military form of power is the supreme power any state can have for its own survival. That was the point of view of CARR. Now let's move on to Hans J. Morgenthau, also a very well-known classical realist. We know him from his 6 principles of political realism. Let's discuss what does Hans J. Morgenthau talks about power. First, Morgenthau says international politics, like all politics, is a struggle for power, as he talked about in his second principle of political realism, that national interest of any state is defined in terms of power. We know all that. And he repeats that same proposition in this line: international politics, like all politics, is a struggle for power. Another thing that Hans J. Morgenthau talks about, that power means control over minds and actions of others. It directly means to influence other people or states or their actions. Morgenthau equated power with material as well as non-material resources, both, but distinguished between two stable and non-stable resources. Let's see what does he meant by that. Morgenthau considered diplomacy as the most important factor for the power of any nation. He believed that diplomacy is the tool for any nation or state to exercise its power or influence over other states. A very well-known American political scientist. Let's start to find out what are his views on the power. First, according to Joseph Nye, power is the ability to influence the behavior of others to get a desired outcome. That's the perspective of Joseph Nye on power. And what does he further says about power? He says Joseph Nye distinguished between two forms of power. One is hard power, which is authoritarianism, threat of force for achieving the desired outcome or behavior from an other person or a state, coercion, punishment or reward. We also know it as carrot and stick diplomacy. And the second form of power, according to Joseph Nye, is the soft power, ability of people to attract other people to their side, or ability of a state or a nation to attract other nations toward their side without coercion, persuasion, or any other authoritarian technique. John J. Mearsheimer, a very well-known neo-realist. Let's find out what are his views on power. According to John J. Mearsheimer, states have two kinds of power. One is latent power. What does he mean by latent power? It means that refers to socio-economic ingredients that go into building military power. He talks about the socio-economic resources of any nation ready for it to build its military power and exercise those military power on its rival state. Another kind of power that he talks about is military power, direct military power. He is in favor of direct building up of military power. That's the view of John J. Mearsheimer on power. So these were the few most important IR thinkers and their views on power. They all have their own perspective on power, and through which they look at the different events happening in the world. They have their own glasses through which they predict the events happening in the world. So that was all. Thank you very much for listening. Like, comment, share and subscribe. Thank you very much. Allah Hafiz.